and then we will proceed with the rest of the program from there. So, Liz, I think I can start with you, then you pass the mic around.
Morning, everyone. I'm Liz Olivo from Keynote. Morning, everyone. My name is Mulan Njoku. I'm an advocate. I run my own firm, very much interested in Good morning, everyone. My name is Beta Mugera. Communications person with communications consultancy called Beta Prices. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Faye Angie. I'm the head of regulatory at Safaricom.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Caroline Buko. I work at Safaricom. Good morning. My name is Jean Olane, and I lead human community at Facebook.
Good morning, everybody. I say good morning. Good morning. I want to hear it a bit louder. You can't have taken breakfast in such a prestigious place. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Okay, my name is Rachel Kima from CA in CPA department. That is Consumer Economic Affairs. Morning, everyone. My name is Dorcas. I do Internet. I'm also from the fourth edition of the American School of International.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Musa. I'm from the Associates. My name is Macaulay from Civil Society.
Good morning, everyone. My name is George Robert from Kenya.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Thomas Kaberi from Consumer Consulting.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Angela Benaya from Tennis Global.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ronald Kennedy from Technical University.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Naman Kariuki from Global High-Tech SMEs Limited.
Hello, everyone. My name is Paul Shaka. I go by consulting, and I love this community.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Steve from Tunapanta.
Good morning, everyone. My name is David from the King's School of Law, and also King's School of Law.
Morning, everyone. My name is Zudia Mwangi from King's School.
Good morning,
my name is Fiona Ogesu.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Valentine.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Raja Yahya, an animator, and also attended the Kenya School of Internet Governance.
Morning, my name is Estanisha Benita, video editor. I also attended the Kenya School of Internet Governance.
Morning, everyone. My name is Kevin Jagge from Internet Society.
Morning, everyone. My name is Abdul Karoli, Internet Society.
Good morning, I'm Mrs. Freeman, Internet Society.
Good morning, my name is
Good morning, everyone. My name is Steve Gogo.
JP, how many weeks? I'm part of so we have to listen first. I also run my own design firm, caption, you can also talk about gender rights. And I'm part of Kenya School of International Governance last year.
Hello, my name is Bilima. I work on human rights for sexual and gender minorities, and I'm also part of
You usually get your feed. In India, in USB.
Good morning. I am Margaret Nyang'obe, a member of Communications and Multimedia at LIVESTREAM, as well as a consultant at SDC.
Good morning, everybody. So from whom IT specialist in South County.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning.
Feed, but kuna mzako sasa
My name is Okoth Okoth. I'm an animator from the Golden Creations Limited and also member.
And the Internet Society Kenyan chapter that is also supporting us. Again, the Communications Authority has been a key supporter of the Kenya Internet Governance Forum. Kenya was one of the first countries in Sub-Saharan Africa and in the region to have a national Internet Governance Forum and also to host a regional Internet Governance Forum. We started this journey in October 2008 at KICC. And since then, we have more than 100 initiatives globally. They're called national and regional initiatives. But Kenya was a pioneer, and many people still look up to Kenya as a pioneer in this space. So there will be many of our colleagues and friends from different parts of the world who will be following some of the proceedings that we will have in this session. So as we do every year, we have an interesting set of topics that we are going to be discussing today for the better part of the day. And we have a fireside chat in the evening. I'll shortly run you through the program so that you can know what we should expect during the day. But I think, allow me to say that the journey has been long and has been interesting insofar as internet development in Kenya is concerned. We can see new things every day in the media. Some time back, all we were discussing was access-related issues. But we've moved beyond discussing access. There was a time when we we had to discuss affordability of the internet. Now we are no longer talking about that. Now we are talking about rivers. Now we are talking about quality. I was looking at an African proverb that says that if the rhythm of the drumbeat changes, then the steps must adapt. So as the drumbeat beats keep changing, we have to adapt to survive. Okay? We've seen in some of our neighboring jurisdictions taxes on some of the services that we are using over the internet, and we thought that the rain will not catch up with us. But on internet development can also be facilitated. Among us, we also have representatives of community networks. Access has been a major issue. I know most of us may have heard of the Universal Access Fund or Universal Service Fund that is provided by the Communications Authority. And you know that they are working with our service providers to make sure that for mashinani, we also have connectivity. You know, most of us, if we switched off internet in this room, I'm sure half the room would walk out or you'll start getting stressed. Yeah? And tweeting about the service providers. I don't want to name them, isn't it? Why have they denied us this particular service? So in the same way, when you go to the villages, you realize that increasingly we need good connectivity, we need good power in the villages. So we'll be discussing community networks, and we have some colleagues from community networks in our midst who will help us understand what is happening to make sure that those that do not have access to the internet are also included in this great conversation. Allow me to run through the program at this point. The program is available on kigf.or.ke. It is a living document. You may see some changes in the course of the day as we move along. But nonetheless, there's a concept note, and that just explains what the Internet Governance Forum is all about. This is the 12th edition of the Kenya Internet Governance Forum. As I mentioned, the first edition was held way back in October 2008, and we've been growing from strength to strength. I hope that we have all registered at the registration desk. If you pass that desk without registering, you are a mana citizen. Please make sure that we need to account for you. So please, if you haven't registered, after this, we do hope that as many of you who are not on the Kenya ICT Action Network mailing list will be added to the mailing list with your content, of course. But it's important that we account for everyone that is here. Again, let me alert you, in the course of the day, you may hear a few blasts here and there. Or don't run out. There's some construction work that is going on the other side of the hotel or the other wing, and occasionally they do some blasting here and there. So if you see here on the book, just understand it is a construction that is taking place on the other side. So our first session, of course, according to the program that is on your screen there, will be facilitated by Grace Kitaiga, who is the co-convener of the Kenya ICT Action Network. And immediately after that, we are going to have a keynote speech facilitated by the Communications Authority. The Director General, is not in a position to be with us this morning, but he has sent a representative. Again, let me say that he has been one of the champions of internet governance from the time we started way back in 2003, when the discussions on the World Summit of the Information Society were taking place, and he's still supporting this process today. After that, we are going to have a panel on data governance, and I would like to recognize the presence of Honorable Ashiro Alake Karibu, the Vice Chair of the Senate ICT Committee. Will give an opportunity to salimia wananchi shortly. We are going to have Honorable William Kisan, the Chair of the National Assembly on ICT and Innovation, joining us. We are also going to have Mercy Wanjao from the Communications Authority of Kenya. I see Mercy Debwa and the Facebook team. Facebook is also one of the supporters of Kenya Internet Governance Forum. I'm sure she will be speaking to us later on and introducing the Facebook team that is here. We have Stephen Kiptines from KO and Associates, and also a Kenya Network Information Center board member. And we are going to have Philip Pigo, the technical advisor for data, innovations, and open government, from the Office of the President. And then we are going to have Daniela from Global Partners Digital, one of our partners, one of Internet partners. From 10:30 to 11, we are going to have a plenary session, just to have to reflect on the issues that we will have discussed in the morning panel. And after that, we will move into the second session on security, stability, safety, and resilience. And our moderator will be William Matatiani from Seriano. Some of you that may not know, Seriano does annual reports on cyber security. And they'll be moderating this panel and also giving us an update on what is happening in the cyberspace in the country. We will have Mr. Joseph Brown from the Communications Authority on that panel. He's from the Cyber Security Department. We also have Jackson Cheboy from the Communications Authority. We'll have Raymond Bech, the President of ISACA, Kenyan chapter. We have April Mora from EcoSphere, and an ISACA board member. And then we have Dr. Bright Kaneni, the head of Cyber Security Services, Internet Solutions Kenya. In the afternoon, we're going to have a youth IGF panel, and we have a parallel meeting for the youth in Barara. Barara room is across where we are having our tea, facilitated by Watoto Watch Network. But they will be joining to also give their contribution in so far internet governance is concerned. We are going to have another session on digital inclusion, moderated by Thomas Kaderi in the afternoon. We have Paul Iage from the Communications Authority joining us. We are going to have Engineer Daniel Obama from the National Communications Secretariat. We're going to have Eric Hassman from BRIC. We have Ben Robert from Liquid Telecom. We have Raf Mazda. We have Sam Ishuru from Naila. We have Josephine Eliza from Tunapanda Networks, and she's also coordinating a project. they can access it. And then today we are having the youth IGF that is moderated by the Photo Welsh Network that is taking place in Barabaro, but in the afternoon they are going to join us. Again, I'm going to repeat housekeeping. We have Wi-Fi. Log onto the Sarova network and use Keynote. The voucher is Keynote. So you can log in with your name and then enter Keynote in caps. Wi-Fi has been sponsored by Safaricom, and we appreciate that. Again, the rooms for any other business are on the right side when you go past the stairs. So for gentlemen and ladies, look out for that. We'll be taking tea at the tents that are on the extreme end. So at tea time, that's where you will head. Over lunch, we'll be giving out lunch vouchers. So make sure you pass by the information desk. This event is live. We are doing it live on live stream, and then we have a hashtag as well, hashtag KIGF 2019, and hashtag Kenya IGF. With those many remarks, I would like to introduce Grace Kitaiga, the convener of Kenya ICT Action Network, to welcome us formally. Karibu Grace. Let's give her a round of applause.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Kenya IGF 2019. And before we start, I would like us to, I just want to mention that today's first August, we have had a very tough July. We have lost prominent Kenyans. And out of those prominent Kenyans, we have lost one of us, the late Bob Colimo. And as a respect to our leaders in the industry and also national leaders, the late Ken Okoth and Governor also, we would like to observe a minute of silence before we begin. So please, let us just do that. Starting, please stand up. And we are starting now. Thank you very much. You can be seated. So on behalf of the Kenya ICT Action Network and other partners and collaborators, I wish to welcome you to the 2019 Kenya Internet Governance Forum. This is an annual forum that we hold to discuss ICT policy issues, ICT policy concerns, and then we look at how we are going to influence those issues and shape policy. For those of you who don't know, Internet has been in this and has been coordinating this since 2008. Actually, it was one of the first countries in the world to hold a national IGF, and we have consistently done that, and we hope to do that. And I think this has been possible because of the multi-stakeholderism nature of the Kenya IGF and the fact that various industry supporters have believed in the IGF. Multi-stakeholderism has actually been reflected in the conversations that we hold here, in the researches that we hold, in the support that we have, because we actually have the different sectors supporting the Kenya IGF. And so we are very grateful to all of you. This year, the Kenya IGF had several components. We had the Kenya School of Internet Governance, where about 40 participants will graduate later today after going through the training. This is our fourth cohort will be graduating, and that is informed by the need for us to have fresh voices. Policy processes can be very tiring and sometimes very discouraging. So we are very glad that you have 40 new voices that will continue taking on that process. We also launched a policy brief on over-the-top OTTs, policy brief, and we thought that that was very important because in 2012, when we went to the World Communication World Communication on International Telecommunications, there were concerns that telcos were complaining that over-the-top OTTs were using their infrastructure and not making any taxes. And so this conversation has actually evolved because OTTs now are actually competing with ordinary telcos, and yet they are not regulated under the telco laws. And so we thought that debate is very bad because it's very important as it falls in our purview to start policy debates, to start engaging and to contribute to that. We also have a youth IGF that's we have a day, it's going on, and then the 60 children will join us in the afternoon to tell us what they have discussed and what are their IG issues. We also launched a tool together with our partner CPESA on ICT accessibility indicators for people with disabilities. And this has been informed by the many conversations we've had that we need to start involving people with disabilities in the IGF. And of course, all this now have culminated into today when we have the Kenya 2019 Internet Governance Forum. In this, I just want to acknowledge our partners because they continue to believe in this process and continue to talk to us. And I want to recognize the Communications Authority that has continued to demonstrate that public participation is possible, is doable. They've continued to demonstrate what multi-stakeholderism is all about, especially in policy processes. They've been very responsive and engaged in any questions that people ask. And actually, we think CA is an example of what a regulator should be and how government institutions should engage the public. Then we want to recognize Facebook. Facebook has also been very engaged, especially with Internet in very many ways. They've remained connected, and we want to recognize the fact that they now have a Kenyan team. Actually, this was a Internet call when Abel started engaging with Internet, and we are happy that Mercy is here now with her team and George, and we hope that they will continue to enhance the engagement. We want to thank Safaricom for connecting people. This is not just a phrase, an advertisement phrase, but it's actually in practice. So we will thank Safaricom for being open, for continuing to support. They actually have supported the Wi-Fi in all IGFs that we have had, and they're supporting the Wi-Fi that you have today. On top of that, you will each receive airtime worth 500 shillings donated by Safaricom. And so we thank Safaricom for being responsive even to the questions through Talk to Safaricom. We've had other long partners who continue to believe in the process. Kenny believed in IGF when nobody knew how it would evolve. and they're still here with us. So we are very happy. ISOC, we thank you for continuing to work with us in this process. We have the Internet Governance Support Association. The first time they were formed, we were the first ones to be supported. We thank you, and we recognize many other partners, like CPESA, Global Partners, Digital, Huawei, Watoto Watch, and the Ministry of ICT that has continued to also give us guidance in how we engage and shape policy. So the list is long, but please note that we appreciate all of you. We appreciate all our panelists, and I want to, in particular, recognize Senator Abshiro Halake, who has been very responsive in the Senate, committee. I think she requires a clap. Because if you remember, she actually worked with us in setting the agenda for the Senate ICT committee. She just said, we need the industry to engage with us. So we pray that the Senate ICT committee will continue that, and thank you so much for coming. So let me just say, like they say on Q, kwa niaba ya everybody, tunawakaribisha kusafiri nasi kwa siku ya leo. Tunatumaini tutakuwa na majadiliano mema siku ya leo. Asanteni kwa kuchagua KIGF. I now wish to take this opportunity to invite Koi to just give us brief remarks on as a support of this session.
Thank you, Grace. As we know you. Senator Abshiro Halake, Vice Chair of the Senate ICT Committee. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinguished pleasure to be here with you this morning. My name is Koi Kinenjui. I head the regulatory team at Safaricom. We look forward to participating in some interesting discussions today on internet governance, which is an interesting topic coming at a time when the internet is really going through an evolution. We're seeing conversations around data privacy. We're seeing conversations around how the internet is going to, power the next generation of industry. And so these conversations we're having today are going to be really critical to how the internet continues to evolve in Kenya. As we all know, the World Wide Web is considered the guiding technology of the information age. It's no doubt that the internet has become a big influence on society, at least for the 4.3 billion people who connect to it every day. 1 million people are actually joining the internet, the Legion, every day. And for those of you in the room who are considered digital natives, and at least you all look pretty young, I think that encompasses most of us. I'm sure it's very hard to imagine a life where there was not this kind of connectivity. Can you remember those days when we used to go to the post office, walk for a long distance, send a letter, and wait anxiously for a reply? In fact, I was talking to my daughter the other day and trying to explain to her how the letter writing trend happened, how we had actually write love letters to each other, and she just didn't get it. I told her, we used the opportunity to show off our English and to write poems and to impress the other person. We'd use different colored pens. And she said, surely, you can just send an emoji. So yeah, today communication is pretty instant. It's irrespective of physical or geographical distance. So it's no wonder that we say that internet has changed the way we live, work, and play. It's certainly come a long way from the 1960s, but it was little more than the American government's communication network. And in the last 30 years, since the internet was opened up to public and commercial use, the world has undergone a knowledge and technology evolution, in part due to the ease at which we connect now. This phenomenon is giving billions of people around the world access to an endless supply of information. And depending on how you look at it, the word can be both a blessing and a curse. Around the world, Kenya included, young people are making a living off the internet, from content creators to artists to app developers and entrepreneurs. Creative youth are using the internet to create the features that they aspire to, and they're transforming lives while they do it. These young people make up a good percentage of the 3.5 billion searches conducted on Google every day, which is about 40,000 searches a second. Every minute, users watch 4.5 4.15 million videos on YouTube and post over 46,000 pictures on Instagram. Current trends indicate that the jobs of the future will be online, as augmented reality, artificial intelligence, and the Internet of Things take center stage in a digital world. Ladies and gentlemen, for all its good, however, the Internet also has a darker side. And on this side, cyberbullying, radicalization, and inappropriate content thrive and continue to grow, with the victims most often being the most vulnerable in our society. Social media particularly has proven to be a double-edged sword. It connects us on the one hand, but also connects the bad to our society. Unfortunately, fortunately, as the popularity of the internet has grown, these negative elements have come to the fore, especially in the years that we just experienced. And in fact, the 2018 study conducted by global research firm Ipsos reveals that over 65% of cyberbullying in the world occurs on social media, with 1 in 5 parents saying that their child has experienced cyberbullying. So unlike traditional bullying, where the victim knows who the aggressor is and can report him or her, cyberbullying represents a bigger challenge because bullies are able to hide behind their computers and phones, often using pseudonyms and fake names to target their victims. Being a teenager and a young adult trying to discover who you are in today's world is really hard. Having to deal with cyberbullying and negative trends that are emerging makes it even harder. And so we, as the people in this room, have a responsibility to make sure that the internet remains a safe place, a place where knowledge can thrive, and where the young can continue to learn from the rest. This is why internet governance, which is the theme of this conference, is so important. We all know the internet is here today. It's only going to grow and evolve and get bigger. And its benefits far outweigh the challenges that it presents now, whether to governments, the private sector, or individuals. And I say this not just because the private government is in the business of providing that. I say this because as a mother, as a member of this society, of this community, and as a member of the global citizenship that is connected by the web, we all need to take this very seriously. For Safaricom, this means that we continue to invest in data, we continue to work with stakeholder groups to bring these conversations to life, and we will try and create a world where people can connect without fear and without worries. As the importance of the internet continues to increase, so is the need for better governance, structured principles and programs that will shape its use. And for us, this is the focus of our conversation today. Internet governance, as Grace said, requires a multi-stakeholder approach for it to succeed, which you can only do with support from all of us, including the government, private sector, civil society, regulators, and of course, us as a community. Now, as much as this type of governance has been referred to as an oxymoron, largely because nobody owns the internet, I believe we all have the individual responsibility to ensure that the internet continues to be used for good. This is why, for example, Safaricom is working with the Internet Watch Foundation to protect children from exposure to inappropriate content online. This is a collaboration that is helping us identify and block websites that target children, especially with sexual inappropriate content. We also recently partnered with UNICEF to give free access to the Internet of Good, an initiative that will continue to contribute to bridging the digital divide by making life-saving and improving information accessible and low cost. These are small steps, but it signifies our continued commitment to working with stakeholders to create the internet that we want for one Kenya, one minute, and one vision. In closing, I would like to remind us all of the saying that we're part of saying at Safaricom, which is when we come together, we believe that truly great things happen. Our late CEO, Bob, truly believed this in his heart. He believed that without our business being a responsible participant in our community, we would not be able to deliver the solutions that would really make an impact on people in this country. And we want to continue that vision. We want to be able to bring that vision we have for this country to life. And so I believe as we continue this spirit of collaboration, which for us is hinted on SDG 17, which is the partnership goal, that will guide us as we continue to work on this journey together. I'm glad to see representatives from all the organizations we work with in this room, including Keynote, who remains a key stakeholder in the development of governance in Kenya. We still have a lot of work to do, and so mine is to just say, I wish us pleasant and fruitful conversations, and thank you for listening to me this morning. Thank you.
In the interest of public participation also and consultation, Senator Abshiro has a duty at the late governor's Lavoso funeral process that's going on at all things. So we have requested CA to allow us to have the panel first, and then we will do the keynote thereafter, so that she can, Senator has ordered us to come here, and so that she can also begin to in one day. So Mercy Ndegwa, the head of public policy in East Africa and the home of Facebook, Karibu, 2 minutes, and then you welcome your panel onto the stage. I think the panel can start walking onto the stage so that we can time. So I would like to invite Senator Abshiro to stage. And Philip, please come to the, and then Zano.
Good morning, everyone. Mine is very quick because I'll be engaging with the panel to set a context of why we're here and what is important about knowing the issues that we're dealing with today, which is very important, the data governance issue. And I have a very distinguished panel before you. You can see all of them look very, very good. And they have even better content with regards to discussing this topic. But mine is to thank you at Facebook. We are present and willing to engage with government and policymakers and all stakeholders to be able to identify or together work on developing privacy and governance structures that are suitable for the market. And this is the reason why we're here to engage, the reason why we have an Africa public policy team made up of Africans. And I see some of the colleagues at the back. And so we'll be looking to have this audience engage with the panel to unpack a little more about what Kenya is doing in this space and how we can be able to develop something that is appropriate for Kenya and for how we want our data is going forward. We know that the internet position has been amazing in bringing forth benefits. We heard about some of the concerns that are there with this as well. But then we also know that we can go even further in terms of what we can do in driving impact on the ground with providing solutions using data. So let's interrogate this conversation even more in the panel, and welcome to an active participation. So thank you so much for your time, and I will now move over to the panel. Okay, I hope all loud enough. You can hear us. I'm sure everybody on my panel. Okay. So good morning, everyone. Once again, I would like to welcome my panel and give a little bit of a briefing to who they are, so that you can have an indication of how very able they are to be in front of this space. So we have, I'll start with ladies first, of course. We have Honorable Abshiro Alake, who is the Vice Chair of the Senate ICT Committee. Okay, and she is also at the Kanu nominated member of Senate, focusing on the special interests of women and other vulnerable groups, including youth, people with disabilities, and other marginalized groups. She's an experienced leader whose work is notable for increasing capabilities, talent, and productivity of organizations. A lifelong issue-based change agent by track record and character has played an instrumental role in the transformation of key organizations in Kenya, such as the Kenya Wildlife Service and the Kenya Red Cross. Since her nomination in 2017, or August 2017, Abshiro, who was then the chairperson of the Kenya Women's Senate Association, and he's also currently the vice chairperson of Senate, as I've indicated in the introduction. He's also holding the title of chairperson, Center for Multi-Party Democracy, which covers all the political parties. And he's a member of the Senate Standing Committee on Land, Environment, and Natural Resources, as well as the Executive Committee member of the Kenya Women's Parliamentarian Association. So she's definitely wearing very, very many hats, and from all of those perspectives, I hear a lot of women-related things. Keeps me very excited and looking forward to hearing a lot more about women and how data governance is important for them. Also, so welcome very much. We'll be giving, after the introduction, I will allow for each of them to give a few remarks on what they're doing around this issue, but I will just go with a round of introduction part. On my immediate right is Mr. Stephen Kipsinet, a distinguished lawyer or defensive advocate of the High Court of Kenya. He is from KO Associates and Chemist board member. He is currently the senior partner technology and intellectual property practice at KO Associates, with extensive expertise in the IT sector. He has amassed experience from the various organizations and institutions. He has served over the past 18 years. Stephen has been involved in the advisory of key transactions and consultancies, which have included legal and regulatory affairs in the IT industry. He has also served as one of the inaugural directors of the Kenya ICT board, where he provided strategic leadership and direction on business process outsourcing, digital inclusion initiatives, PASHA in brackets, the development and launch of a government e-portal to connect government departments and ministries and ICT investment in Kenya. Stephen is currently a director on the board of the Competition Authority of Kenya and director legal at the Kenya Network Information Center, Kenya, and the Kenya Country Code top level domain registry. Welcome so much again, Stephen Kipsinet. Lastly, I will introduce to my far right, Mr. Philip Tigo, like you have a French name, is Tigo, who is the technical advisor of data, innovations, and open government at the Office of the Deputy President. He is also the director for Africa for the Thunderbird School for Global Management. Mr. Tigo is also a technical advisor at the Office of the Deputy President on Data, Innovation, and Open Government, recently recognized by a political as one of the world's 100 most influential people in digital government in 2018. So you're in the presence of royalty within the world of digital government issues. He is the point of contact for the Open Government Partnership, OGP, and a member of the World Economic Forum Global Council on Food System Innovation. Thank you so much, Tigo, for joining us. Tigo, I had a friend who called CH so excuse my so welcome very much, Mr. Tigo. We'll also be joined later on in the panel by Mr. John Olubengo, whom you're all familiar with, and also a key member of the Internet community. And I will not go through his credentials now, but maybe when it comes to introduce him. So thank you very much, and may I request that you all applaud the wonderful panel and encourage them to engage with you. Thank you so much. So I will turn to you, Honorable Shiro. I would like for you to share with us a little bit about what is being done from a legislative perspective in regards to this question of data governance, especially your involvement as the Vice Chairperson of the ICT Committee in Senate.
Thank you, Sir. First of all, before I delve into that, let me just congratulate all of you for coming together to speak about internet governance, because sometimes, I don't know, maybe it's just us or it's not true for you, but for us, we feel like we're painting in the dark sometimes when it comes to internet governance. From a political perspective, from a legislative perspective. So I was very excited, and this is why I'm here, even though I was actually accepted also at the All Saints Cathedral, and it allowed me also to stay poorly and pass my condolences to the leaders that we've lost in the last few weeks, starting with our leader from Safaricom, Bob Collingwood, then came a call a few days ago, and now Governor Laboso. So my heartfelt condolences to all of them, because these are people who made change and have really trailblazed for us in their teams. And so I would like to pass my condolences. But to go on to you, let us say congratulations, because our country for a long time has been known for just the wrong things. But I think in this space of ICT, we are on to big things. And not because because of anything, but because we talk to each other. So first of all, Keynote, thank you very much for being the convener for this. You've done great. You always convene the right people on the table, so very well done. I'm very proud of what you do. But without the rest of the team members that are here, without the rest of the stakeholders here, you wouldn't have been successful. So thank you very much for making sure that in this country, we're not just known for corruption and for other things, but we're known for innovations like our mobile money, for instance, because whenever it comes to mobile money, we stand up and claim to be the most innovative in this world. So again, that shows that we're bright sport. There are things that Kenya can excel at, and we have the capacity to do that, and we can do that. And innovation is about brainstorming, about platforms and visual things. So I'm very excited actually to see all of you here, because I know you bring to this forum a lot of expertise, a lot of experience, and a lot of innovation and creativity. So I'm happy and I'm very proud that the future of Kenya, of Africa, because I know this adds up to the continental and the East African IDF forums and the rest of it, that we are trailblazing, we are actually taking the front line on this. So again, just listening, I will tell you in a minute what we're doing at Senate, but the fact that you're here discussing, brainstorming, and sharing experiences is giving us a lot of comfort as legislators and as government, because, as I said, we feel like we are painting in the dark, even with regard to the legislation we're making to govern the internet, or the legislation we're making to govern data. But the fact that you're here and you're experts, and you're brainstorming, you're sharing experiences, and you're looking at scenarios that may unfold, you're looking
if we work with you, will not be so off, so to speak. And this is why when we came to Parliament, I went on the Keynote forum and said, talk to Senate. Tell us what should inform our agenda. What should be our priority for the next 5 years in terms of ICT? And you, all of you, gave me such wonderful ideas. All of you gave such wonderful proposals. And those are the proposals that have made the priority for the Senate ICT committee. Those are the proposals that actually are the list of things that we've done, and including the data protection that cybersecurity issues, all the things you've said actually are on the list. We've actioned some of them are yet to be actioned, some of them are in the process of being actioned. And so I'm happy that different stakeholders have come to look at issues around internet governance, around data governance. But to go to Ms. Degwa's question, there's a lot that we're doing at the Senate, but let me talk about Kenya Parliament, because what we don't understand sometimes is that the Kenyan Parliament is a bicameral parliament. We have the National Assembly, which is still Parliament. Then we have the upper house. Anyway, then we have the Senate, which is also part of the bicameral parliament. So when we talk about parliament, what is parliament doing? We're talking about both, actually, not just one. I know there's all this misconception around somebody saying, you're not a member of parliament, you're a senator. A senator is also a member of parliament because we legislate under Article 96, we oversight and we represent people, yourselves. So both the houses of parliament are actually doing a lot. Are we doing enough, or are we doing it efficiently is another matter, and we can get to that. But quite a bit is being done in terms of internet governance. But the most important thing what we should be doing is talking to you on what we should be doing with internet governance. And that is why, even if today was a really hectic day, we have 2 funeral services actually running today for Honorable Ken Okoth and for Honorable Laboso. I felt, let me come here, and thank you very much, CA, for standing down your speech and letting us fast track this. We will also make sure that we don't take too much time. So there's a lot we're doing. We're looking at data protection laws, as you know, and we've worked with you, with most of you, in terms of the data protection bill that is before where is it now? It's before the National Assembly. Okay, unfortunately, there's a bit of a confusion with that. We have 3 data protection laws at the moment. Isn't that fantastic? Yeah, I'm confused too. But anyway, in 2013, we had data protection bill that was done by the 11th Parliament, the Senate, and then it lapsed. So the minute we arrived, and I went on the forum where you told me that that is priority for you, we picked it and made it #1 priority. So straight away in 2017, we drafted the data protection bill in Senate. Then the data protection bill, we went through every stage: stakeholder engagement, engagement with the ministries, public participation, harmonization with international internet governance issues and data management and governance bills around the world. We did every single thing, went through the first reading, the second reading, the third reading, voted for it, made amendments at committee level, finished, and then we learned that the executive had also worked on another data protection bill. So we called them, we summoned them and said, why are you doing this? Why don't we just take this as the country's data protection bill? And so they said, well, you know, the cabinet had said we do this, and they said, why didn't you say there was something being done? So let's harmonize what you have. So we sat down for 3 months and harmonized with what the CS had with his task force, after which then we took our bill, as is the norm, to the National Assembly. Unfortunately, the one we had harmonized has also been introduced on the floor of the National Assembly, and a private member's bill has also been introduced on the National Assembly. So our bill is actually with one of the committees of the National Assembly, and then we have 2 other bills at different stages of reading. I think first reading for the government bill, and then I think second reading for the private member's bill. So we have, and that is definitely a mess. It is a mess, it's rubbish, because really we should be able to harmonize and decide to give the country a bill or an act to govern data and for us to finish in good time, because it's, if you look at when it started in Senate, it's almost 7 years in the making. Well, perhaps maybe not a bad idea, because maybe we know more now, and there's lots more that perhaps we have put. There are many clauses that perhaps in 2013 we were not very clear with, which is fine. But now there may be a risk of a court process again. But we're trying to mitigate against that. So the ICT Committee of Senate and the ICT Committee of the National Assembly has a joint meeting in the next maybe a week or 2, to just look at the way forward. So in that respect, and I know a lot of you are waiting to hear, when do we have a data protection law? We are a bit behind in that sense. Our apologies, but we will definitely work to make sure that that is done. In other areas of internet governance, in other areas of legislation, in other areas of perhaps cybersecurity and others, and listening to Koi, she talked of the opportunities that the internet provides, but also the risks inherent in the use of internet. Cyberbullying, for instance. And Ms. Ndegwa said to me, she would like to hear it's women and what have you. The #1 people that are bullied are women and girls, especially in the political space. The #1 thing that happens to us with new media and with the internet is, for us, especially women politicians, we take so long to get out of the house in the morning because we're like, who is going to post this dress? Is it long enough? Is this, you know? And I'm thinking, I could have read the entire Estonian ID system by the time I'm thinking and dancing around the fear of cyberbullying, right? A few days ago, I was at the governor's wedding, and and Senator Orengo walked in and said hi to me and hugged me. And somehow, I don't know how the mouth was moved to put on top of his mouth. And that's what was on the social media. And then he said, Senator Orengo will live forever. So, and everything that we do and the serious things that we do then get lost in those kinds of things. So again, we're looking at these things, but we want to legislate in such a way, because even a knife is a fabulous thing. We cook with it, but it still kills us sometimes, right? So the internet is the same. It could be double-edged sword, but we want to make sure that our legislation is not restrictive and does not stifle innovation or trade. So we're working on these things. As you know, the cybersecurity law, unfortunately, is before court. But again, this is some of the things. I was looking at issues around, open data. What does that involve? We're looking at smart cities. I think looking at our Konza city, the ICT committee is also interested to see how do we use the internet to provide good services through the ICT sector. So we are legislating quite a bit on these things. Are we moving at fast enough pace? I don't think so, because of the many challenges. Number one being perhaps the painting in the dark, not knowing, are we legislating for something that would change in 3 seconds and then render that piece of legislation obsolete in, so there's always amendments. And this is one thing I noticed since I came to Parliament. We're having to amend the laws even before we have finished the 3rd reading, right? So how do we deal with that? Is some other challenges that we have. That's not to give an excuse to say that that's why our laws take so long, but especially in this field, I know that as soon as we finished, people would come with, no, this is, so we are constantly in revision mode, which is a good thing perhaps, but it does take time and sometimes, but the previous laws usually are binding until such time as the other laws are amended. So you should not worry about lacunas in law or in legislation. So every single thing is being done. But from the Senate ICT committee, where I am the vice chair, I want to assure you as stakeholders, we're behind you. If there are things that need to be legislated, or maybe perhaps there are risks that we must mitigate, or some regulations we must take a look at, please come to us with them. Please come to us with. And one thing I keep giving feedback to the private sector, perhaps because you're very competent in your areas, you don't sometimes use Parliament as much as you should, right? Then the NGO, the public benefit organizations are very good at telling us, do this for us, do this for us, do this for us, not the private sector. So please get in the habit of, because we're there to represent you, get in the habit of coming to me and saying, we need A, B, C, D to be in place for us to have a good environment in which to do our business, right? Because NGOs are always in our committees. They tell us, do this legislation, do this, amend this. But the private sector is very self-sufficient, very happy. Then what you don't realize is you could be happier if we worked together and if we did for you some of the things that would make the environment in which you do business much more conducive and much more profitable and much more efficient, so to speak, right? So I think this is some of the things we're doing, and this is some of the things I would tell you, but I must give a caveat. I'm not an expert in internet governance. I'm still learning. I think I became the vice chairperson because I had so many gadgets. They assumed she must know what she's doing. I had so many gadgets and they thought, So, but I'm here to learn. Please come to us, give us, educate us, use us, and guide us in terms of what legislation needs to happen for you to have a good environment in which to live, work, and play, like one of you said. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your remarks. Thank you. And I think that leads us very well to introducing the panelists who just joined us when we just got started, and that's Mr. John Olubengo, who is a member of Keynote. I know a very, very active one. He has over 20 years experience in the ICT training and consulting, and his work experience included working for the Strathmore University as the IT course director and as the founding dean faculty of computing at the Multimedia University. He is currently a PhD candidate at the University of Nairobi and continues to provide consultancy services to the government and to other organizations. Most recently, he was appointed as a member of 2 critical task forces looking into emerging technologies and policies. And these are the National Task Force on Blockchain and Artificial Intelligence, as well as the Data Protection Task Force, respectively. He also writes a weekly column on topical ICT issues in one of the largest dailies in East and Central Africa. Welcome, Mr. Lubengo. And I think Honorable Abshiro leads us to you in a very interesting way. She's talked about painting in the dark and not being very clear about what's going on. And it sounds like from what you've said here in your bio that you have been involved in the Data Protection Task Force. Would you please be able to maybe help us understand a little bit of what is going on in the darkness and also advise the audience on how they can engage and support the process of data governance in Kenya?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Marcy. Apologies for coming late. But with regard to the Data Protection Task Force, it was commissioned by the minister, I think after Senator's bill was, I think, making rounds in the Senate. Basically, the intention was to provide a framework for protecting citizen data. Also, the motivation was perhaps given a push by the enactment of GDPR. GDPR is the European Union Data Protection Regulatory Framework, which to a very large extent expects that European businesses should trade with businesses out of Europe that have certain protections. In other words, if you're a European data controller or data processor, you face punitive penalties in the event that data belonging to citizens from Europe, indeed including people living in Europe who may not be citizens, if their data is compromised simply because you shared it with some destination that doesn't have any protection, then you will be penalized. So as a country, we felt that if that is the case, our businesses in this region may be disadvantaged. Imagine Ghana, Mauritius, South Africa, which have data protection laws, getting businesses that will have otherwise come to us, but instead the European businesses would say, we can't deal with Kenya. I mean, there's no protective framework. So that gave the impetus, because as Senator said, these bills have been in Parliament for donkey years. But with the enactment of the GDPR, there was a lot of push, and so the task force was formed, and we submitted our report or draft bill to the minister early in the year. As Senator said, we actually were asked to harmonize, and we held a couple of meetings with the Senator committee and with the need to harmonize. And I think we had gone to the extent of saying that as long as the Senate bill has this and these provisions, I mean, it really doesn't matter whether the bill comes from Senate or National Assembly. So as the technical team, that's how far we went. The rest now became political layer, and so we couldn't hack it. That's what I can say. Yeah,
I see. I don't know how much hope that gives us, but I'm just curious now to bring in the others to hear maybe from Philip. What do you think about whether the government do you think the government should or even business as well, government and business should trade in personal data or data that belongs to its citizens?
The government doesn't trade.
No, so government in terms of using data and also the business in terms of their trade activities.
Because I speak from where I come from. Basically, Senate and Parliament is about legislation. We're about the how. Basically, how do you then ensure that a lot of these provisions are sort of implemented? We run an interesting outfit at the Deputy President's office. We are nested under the head of law and policy, basically understanding that law and policy has always been the enemy of innovation. And our experimentation, interesting enough, is we started experimenting on a lot of these things you're talking about in 2015. And we were quite excited when the late Bob Collymore actually had joined this journey. And we started envisioning that as much as we are having local conversations, these are global conversations. And Kenya is not really in isolation. As much as we may take donkey as the world is moving. And so if we do not necessarily begin to understand and iterate and experiment on all of these initiatives, then whether you have laws or not, ultimately it's how do you apply them, and where is industry and where is government and where are people. Ultimately, data governance is about those. It's about processes, about technologies, about people. If we don't have enough capacity and capability, I think that's an issue. And my sense is, as much as we want to say, how does government, for example, understand or handle data, it speaks about capability and capacity. Do we have capability and capacity within public sector? Kenya, as much as we have a bicameral parliament, we also have governments, both national and county governments. Our counties' capability and capacity around data strong enough to understand or to articulate or handle data in the fourth industrial revolution, because that's our context. Is national government or the policies being enacted responsive to that? Are they third industrial revolution and not fourth industrial revolution? So I think for me, my sense is to answer those critical questions. And what we've been doing, I think, from our space is one, is to convene, connect, and catalyze, because the data revolution really is within the private sector. The most valuable companies, I think Facebook is one of them here, would tell you that that how we understand data, or even how we want to think that we even own that data, is questioned every day. I think the basic principle is that data belongs to the individual. And for business, it involves to the customer. And so I think for me, that is a premise. And we cannot disconnect the virtual world or the data world from rights and responsibilities. And so to the very essence that a citizen or an individual or a customer owns that data, then that's the premise. And I think for me, then that speaks to the consent. And you can see why GDPR is a precedence for that, that the individual must consent every single way or access. Anybody who accesses that data at whatever time must get consent from the citizen. So from where we sit, I think we understand that premise, but also there's also a sort of a conflict, because when we talk about governance, we are also in the era of open government, especially for Kenya, right? Public participation is a key. You should not do anything in the dark. Basically, it means then, I think for us is, how do you balance the whole notion of open government, right? Open by default, policy by the people, accountability for results. How do you balance that, especially in the era of the data revolution? And I think for me, so that's what my office is struggling with. And to the extent of how do we then ensure that we create multi-stakeholder ecosystems that brings everybody on board, because ultimately, I think you cannot leave anybody behind. And when you talk about, in the previous revolution, we talked about the digital divide. Right now, it's not about even the digital divide, it's many things. And so when you talk about women, youth, persons with disability, people within the margins of technology, how we consent, deploy technology around, how we deploy technological infrastructure, a lot of that matters. And because everything around governance now is online, then it means technology becomes quite a critical bit of that. I think for me then, it speaks to the extent, one is how do we ensure that everybody is empowered by knowledge? How do we have the necessary protections for those who cannot protect themselves? And this is a conscious decision. And I think both by private sector, because they're the wielders now of technology, they have more data than we have. Let's be honest. There are more data systems that we have. When I talked to Bob, he had more economic data about Kibera than we had. It's the truth. And the frequency of it, he had more, I mean, our frequencies sometimes a year, his frequency is real time. So I think for me, it's to flip your question a bit, is to the extent of how do we co-create protections for citizen data, but also how do we protect the metadata? Because data is okay, but the metadata is where the question is, around privacy, around security, around identity. I think for me, if we can evolve that conversation where we simply say, as much as we want to enact legislation, rules of the road, basic principles around just understanding these are the fundamentals of how we need to protect individual privacy and protections.
Thank you
so much for those comments. And it's interesting that you mentioned, because both of yourself and Mr. Lubengo have mentioned the GDPR, which was, a piece of legislation that was prepared by Europeans for Europeans to determine how their data will be governed. And we know that there's all these efforts that are being done in Kenya currently, from what Honorable Abshiro has mentioned, of what Senate is doing, as well as Parliament in general, and what Walubengo has mentioned. And I'm just curious to bring this question to you, Kiptines. We know that the very essence of an internet governance conversation really is to bring together the voices of different people into determining how they want data issues addressed. The regulatory frameworks are just, not regulatory, but the legislative frameworks are just one part of it. He's very ably been able to articulate some of the other areas that we need to be considering, given that we have the intersection of technology now with also human rights issues, like how do we address concerns of people in minority and so on and so forth. As someone that is involved often in consulting for corporates and others, I'm curious to hear what your view is, first of all, on whether the corporate world actually does have more data than government. I'm very curious as to whether that is actually true, but also to know whether you think that people should be involved in determining their own digital identity, and how then that can be supported by the different stakeholders who are in this room. And then in regards to how Kenya wants to do that, do you feel that we are taking the right steps so far to get to that point where we have a very clear digital identity agenda and governance plan for Kenya?
Thank you. There's a lot that's been said by the previous speaker, which a lot of which is relevant. Actually, the last three speakers. Definitions of public data, definitions of what is open data, definitions of personal data are critical towards understanding what then would be the role of government with regard to data. I agree that government should not be in trade, but government has data and they do a lot of things with that data. And if it's public, it's open data, then it's helping to facilitate access of services by the individual, by the citizenry, by making government a very open place. The lawmaking process, unfortunately, is often very slow, as it should be, I guess, so that all the right questions are asked, the right debates. I mean, we have a public participation requirement, which is constitutional, that makes that process even slower. Truth is, the private sector doesn't wait for the laws to be created, they just go, which then explains why, Safaricom has absolutely more relevant economic data of different cross-sections of Kenyan society than government has, period. And what they do with that data is what then the law will be trying to address. I think government should still and must be accountable for the data that they hold, even if it's public data. The bigger questions really are around the personal identifiable information, which is the privacy discussion around data. The clients we have advised, both very large clients, SME clients, are not waiting for the law. They're doing two things. If it's a very large client who's a responsible corporate citizen, in other words, you must be seen to be doing the right thing. Just because you have data doesn't mean you can use it willy-nilly. Are taking standards at a very high level, which would be GDPR. So back to what Walubengo said, companies are not necessarily finding Kenya competitive if they're coming to set up, if they don't feel there is protections within the country. And there's a derogation under GDPR which speaks to adequacy of legislation in places where that data is processed and or controlled. Having said that, the smaller companies who would be coming to set up, or smaller companies in Kenya, the question is simple. Is there a law requiring me to adhere to a standard? The simple answer is no. It's not there. Let me go out. It's a Wild West. Do what I need to do with that data. Make money with that data if I need to. So again, our law needs to come in like yesterday so that it can hold those people accountable, because then it's a citizenry who end up suffering if their data is misused. Figo mentioned consent. It really all revolves around consent. If the citizen is aware about their rights and about their data, what can and cannot be done with that data, GDPR and hopefully our data protection legislation will really be making consent a requirement at every stage of that process, which, if you're a corporate, is really, really difficult, because it means purpose A, I come to Mr. Thigo, can I use your data for this purpose? Thigo says yes. If I need it for paper purpose B, I need to go back to Mr. Thigo, which is okay, but maybe it's not so okay, because then maybe I need to be able to do a lot more things with this data. So the questions, that we deal with in terms of advising is, how far can you extrapolate that consent? Now, you'd have to talk to a lawyer to, for him to give you the sort of the parameters of how far you can extrapolate within reasonable parameters to allow you to do business, because government cannot be restricting businesses. So I think accountability is absolutely critical. The one other thing I would mention is there's a whole consumer protection agenda around data, which is not really being addressed, but it's already in existence at a level of existing legislation. So if you're looking at the Consumer Protection Act, if you're looking at the Competition Act, if you're looking at the Sale of Goods Act, Sale of Goods and Services, there are accountabilities that companies ought to have with their consumers, their terms and conditions, their terms of service, their terms of operation. So from an ex-ante perspective, there are certain requirements that are put in place by existing laws for the consumer. One of those is accountability for their data, for the information that the company is holding. So in fact, with existing law, you need to be able to account to the consumer, make it clear under your terms and conditions that this is what we are doing, this is what we're going to use your data for. When you move to the ex post perspective, then again, legislation that is in existence would come in. One of the things we don't have is an unfair competition and consumer contract act, which then would deem any contracts which were entered into between, say, a corporate and a consumer against the consumer would be construed in favor of the consumer and not of the corporate. So there's consumer protection issues that have to be discussed around the data protection in order for the consumer to be adequately protected. But to the extent that Kenya is competitive, it's because of what I think the private sector has continued to do in terms of trading with that data. So government, as it introduces legislation, policies, needs to do it from an enabling perspective, not from a restrictive perspective. Otherwise, then our very competitive spirit gets lost.
So much for those comments. I'm just listening to the conversation so far. It sounds like there is obviously a lot of concern around protecting the data and protecting the customer, and it's the reason why I believe that the legislative process is trying to address those instances where those who are processing data may not be doing this, or to enlighten basically those who are involved in any form or shape in data processing or collection on what they can do or cannot do. But I'm curious as to, given the advancements we've seen so far in terms of what data has enabled or made possible in terms of better lifestyles, more convenience in regards to what one can do. A lot of innovation today is addressing the very needs of consumers that they actually are happy to have. Do you think there is value in focusing also on the potential good that can be derived from more data use? And this question really is open to all of you, even to the rest of the audience, which will be opening this up to. And what then do you think we can do? Do we go more in terms of regulating or allowing self-regulation where certain aspects, for example, like consent and transparency about what data is being used for are addressed by the corporates, but then you allow for then innovation to ride on that? Obviously, making sure that there's also enabling frameworks in place. Yes, please. Yeah.
I think that's a very good question, and self-regulation is good, but we have a broken regulatory system in the government already. We must be cognizant of ourselves and the environment in which we operate. Just a few days ago, I was trying to think about what is going on, and we were discussing just about this scourge of cancer. And what occurred to me is that we have a broken regulatory system. If we look at our pharmaceuticals, we're told, and don't quote me because I don't know, that 80% of a lot of the medication we ingest is actually fake. But we have all these regulations in place. We have all the regulatory bodies in place. Again, so self-regulation has its own limitations. But just to touch on some of the other previous comments that were made, there was issues around whether or not data subjects should determine, was it something around we should be determining our own digital ID? Again, we're talking about, again, an environment in which perhaps somebody doesn't even know what their rights are. So, you know, in the political sector, we say we need civic education. I don't know in this sector what we need. IT education or whatever the name is, because what we do in the political place is for people to know what they want or whether or not they must first understand. There must be an awareness, right? What awareness must precede before we even said we will determine our own digital ID? Because if the digital ID is for my own good, I should be wanting it. But if it's not, then, but what awareness, maybe you and I and a few may be aware of some of the good that you want us to focus on, Ms. Degwa, but there's other things as well. And yes, there's more good than bad. Let's face it, right? There's more good than bad so far. Because again, there's always criminality, hopefully is not what everybody sets out to do. It just becomes maybe when there's opportunity for it or whatever it is. But there's sometimes a lot of misuse that then needs to be, then that's why the legislation is there. And but again, legislation and regulations are just as good as the application of them. So, and that is why we, from where we sit, I know it takes long, but we have sought to make sure that the laws that we're putting in place are actually facilitative. That's why we try to harmonize with everything, including the European data regulations as well. In fact, we had several Skype calls with them and went through clause by clause by clause. Not so that we copy, but so that they look at ours and tell us where is restrictions, right? And they were happy with many, some that were not applicable to us, because again, the level of trust in our working environment is different from the level of trust in Estonia, for instance, or the level of trust in Denmark, right? So we of course there are things that we said those we cannot do, and in our stakeholder engagements, MasterCard, yourselves, your lawyers came from Atlanta, wherever, each direction, wherever. But we made sure that we put everything in context to make sure that it applies to us. But even with the best legislation, we see misuse. For instance, and don't quote me, and this is just on a light touch, I bought bras online at Amazon. And from that time on, they sell to me breast enhancement information. I'm like, what? Right? And not Amazon, but other people. And so at some point, I was looking in my room and thinking, how do they know? Is there a camera in? Is there a camera in? And I kept looking around thinking, somebody has put a camera in my bedroom. Then later on, I'm thinking, I kept thinking even as I'm driving, then it occurred to me where it came from. Really, frankly, and this is a true story. I'm not making it up. I literally was looking up thinking, what? Did they bug my room? Then after that, later, and I'm thinking, why are they selling to me these weird things? And then I tried to think back and went back. A few months ago, I had made online purchases that had certain size of things that therefore, so it's not fair. It's just not fair. So those are the kinds of things, but again, there's lots of good because I'm able to get what I need in Nairobi from New York City or whatever it is. So there's lots of good, but then again, there's that side. So it's a double sword. I mean, a double-edged sword, and this is why we will definitely make sure from where we sit. And that is why people are able to do this even as we, so far, we haven't put in place systems where you can't trade online, you can't do this. We're trying to catch up, yes, but please be patient as well. One thing I've noticed also, when we started and now, in terms of the data protection, there'll be a better law now than if we had passed it in 2013. Because of the changes that have happened so far. I'm not excusing the slow pace at which we legislate, but again, we are looking at being very, very facilitative as much as is possible. Okay. But the issue of access, what can this group do? And I'm going to throw to you the challenge. What can this team, this stakeholder do, this multi-stakeholder group do to educate the citizens, and government will also do its bit, of course, on their rights, right? Their digital rights. Because for as long as you don't know your digital rights, then how do I know whether I should determine my own digital presence or not? And what if now we're seeing from the Huduma bill, some functional data must be given because for you to get any services? That is, again, what does that mean? Is it becoming a dictatorial approach using data as opposed to data becoming a democratic thing? So we're looking at these things actually. For me anyway, I'm looking at the democracy of things. Is data making us more undemocratic? And that's why I'm looking at it from
those are useful interjections. I'd like to hear from Thigo as well, who seems to have some comments.
Yeah, I have a comment on of course, there's economic value of data, and I think there's developmental value of data. And part of what we do is to look at the developmental value of data, and I'll be very brief. As I said, we've been trying to experiment on a couple of things, and I think from where we sit, and this is a sort of a global conversation, is that we've seen two data sets that are of strategic value around development. One is telco data, and I'm glad that Safaricom and the teams are here. The other one is satellite data and Earth observations data. And what we've seen, and a country like Kenya has been able to benefit from that. I think in March, we convened with Safaricom an African conversation on how to share, including Parliament, and regulators from 5 countries, on how to share telco data. And we are almost evolving beyond the big legislations. We're almost coming up with a data management framework, right? That looks at what, and this is interesting. So we're sort of assigning value to data. If Safaricom has telco data, what is the minimum shareable data set that they can provide for development? That of course applying security and all that and privacy frameworks. What is minimum? But when you look at minimum, also Safaricom also has to look at from the other end, what economic value is that data? So to see if they can, so that they of course don't lose the economic advantage. I think that's one. 2, on satellite data, interesting enough is we don't own satellites. And what we've seen over time, and this is the value of how open data comes in, is that we've been able to sign a quick agreement with European Space Agency, NASA, Australian Space Agency, on critical data sets for the last 30 years around climate, agriculture, and food. All that data is being provided to you for free, right? So we've already, and interesting enough is simply by that, we've had investments of about $18 million. And so this is something you'll start to see over time, is this data being released, being analyzed so that it can be released for development. And because of that, Kenya has been able to accelerate the setup of its own space agency. We set it up in 3 months because of this data. You cannot believe it. So I think for me, if there's any practical sense of the value of data and not necessarily looking at the negative bits of data, then there's an intrinsic possibility of leapfrogging. If we've been able to set up a space agency in 3 months, being able to leverage on all satellites from 30 meters res to 10 meters res, when you see Vihiga working on satellite data right now, that's a capability. A county now using satellite data from Airbus for its development planning, that I think for me is what is the potential and the possibility. So I think we need to focus, I think for me, on that. And we have a lot of examples here in Kenya that people can see.
That's fantastic. I think I want to open up to the audience for questions, even as we wait to have someone help us with the mics. Or they will, okay. Oh, okay, so I understand that you will come to the microphone at the front. As we wait for them to queue up, would you kindly, I think you want to give some more comments? And we'll keep it brief because we're almost out of time.
Actually, it's not a comment, it's an apology that I might leave in a few minutes. So anybody has a question to me to be given priority, then I answer them and I run away. Thank you.
Okay, you've heard. So anyone with a specific question to Honorable Abshiro, please. Yes. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ali Hussein, and my question is to Senator Abshiro, and I think Thigo. That's from the OP, is from the DP. Do you think we are entering an era of overregulation, especially within the ICT sector? And I come from the school of thought that ICT is evolving so much that we even don't understand what's going to happen tomorrow. So if we're in such a hurry, regulate, we are going to find ourselves in a cocoon where innovators are unable to maneuver. I mean, I was drawn to a story 2 days ago by the BBC that the Australian police now wants to police algorithms. So I was like, okay, did the BBC get this wrong? Or what is it? I mean, what did they mean by policing algorithms? I mean, obviously we are getting into a situation where things are very fluid. You have big tech companies, I'm glad that Facebook is here today, that seem to transcend effortlessly sort of natural borders. But at the same time, you're gonna find yourself in the same situation. For example, Safaricom has launched Safaricom Global today. Where is that gonna fit? The minute they start operating in the US, they're gonna start facing the FCC. Are they ready for those kind of things? How do we deal with such questions? And maybe also Kipton as a lawyer may want to weigh in on that question. Thank you.
Thank you. May I urge all those who are coming to ask questions to try and not illustrate the question so that we can, because two of our panelists will be leaving for other meetings. Kindly, thank you. And introduce yourself as well before you ask the question.
Okay, my name is Paul Moshene, and I have a specific question to the Honorable Senator. So mine is concerning, apart from the data protection bill, your biggest test will be on the Huduma number bill, which is coming up for legislation and debate. So I'd like you to tell us how you'll assure the public that there'll be safeguards on perhaps how the data is collected and used, because the minister was not transparent about this. And some of the proposals have been quite questionable. So one of them is perhaps that wasn't very clear is how data will be shared to external third parties, given the fact that the government does deal with contractors and you don't want your data to go to a third party without perhaps your consent. That maybe another thing also is the right for the public to know, and also to ask the government to be more transparent about what it's doing with its data. And the other thing is also on the issue of security and the protection of the data, that it does not fall in the wrong hands. These are questions that were not tackled by the CS, and I think you as Parliament, you have the oversight and you have the power to actually even maybe call for the minister or the agencies to actually explain what they're going to do with that data. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think I'll hand over for those two questions to be answered first as we wait for, do you have the microphone? You want to go first? Okay.
Thank you very much, Ali and Tony, was it? Paul. Yeah, Paul. Now, overregulation, Ali. We don't have even a single one. So what are you talking about overregulation? We've taken too long. So that's a good thing. You see, now we initially I thought there may be overregulation, yes, but it's not so much overregulation really from where I sit. As it is, this being a new area, it's carte blanche. There's nothing in place. So we can't already talk about overregulation, frankly, not at least with the pieces of legislation. Yes, we're starting to figure things out, but we don't have anything even yet. I know there's a fear that so much is being done, therefore it might get there. But rest assured, I think the regulations have all been done in good faith to govern the way we do things, to bring sustainability to the way we do things, to bring, rule of law and order into things. Because again, you cannot have mayhem with these things. And you know what self-regulation sometimes can have risks in them. So I do not believe that we are overregulated because A, there was nothing to begin with. B, we're still in the process and haven't even had any substantive pieces of legislation yet in application. So for now, I don't think we should be worried. If and when we feel as stakeholders that they are, bring them to our attention and how they are hurting your business. And we'll definitely make sure that we facilitate an amendment process or a process that then will ease that pain, so to speak. So at the moment, I think you shouldn't be worried about overregulation. First of all, these are really frameworks. And remember things like data protection. The business outsourcing that is happening is bypassing us, like what Lubengo has said, because we don't have the data protection laws. So this delay is actually bad for us. So some regulations are necessary to open up business for you. So let's look at that. But if, again, and we're working in a multi-stakeholder forum where you can see government is very interested in facilitating you, and so you shouldn't worry about that. But if there's any specific thing that you think is stifling growth, let us know and we will deal with that. Now, Huduma. I have no answers to that because I'm also thinking that it wasn't transparent. I'll agree. And we've summoned the CS to explain to us. In fact, even census, we said, come and tell us even how census information will be used. Maybe Huduma, the other ways of which government is picking information of our electorate, of our people that we represent. So for us as oversights, again, we will definitely make sure, Paul, we will ask these questions on your behalf. And if he didn't answer you, we will make sure we get an answer from him. We will ask, and we did ask at the beginning, actually. In fact, of course, Huduma number and the registration are elements of the Huduma bill, but the bill should have preceded that, right? So that then the bill guides the other elements, right? So it's a topsy-turvy process. I accept and agree. I'm not, faulting my friend Musharu, but these are things I asked him before, and I'll ask him again to be more transparent, to do things. Again, life is not a linear thing. We will give him the flexibility. Sometimes things don't have to happen in one long straight line. And if he tells us maybe the constraints or the reasons why some of the elements preceded others, he'll tell us. And if we're satisfied, then we'll give him the benefit of doubt. But you're right. There's certain very obscure provisions, certain very obscure or not very clear things that we will ask on your behalf, and we shall do that shortly. And we've done it, actually. In fact, it's an ongoing process. And if you remember, we asked why the hurry to do this Huduma registration process. We did ask so many of these things. We also haven't been satisfied with some of the answers. But again, as colleagues, we were giving him time to perhaps, come up with this bill. And in fact, the bill was a way of rectifying some of the ways in which other elements of the Huduma or the NIMS project had, gone other things before the other. So in terms of dependency of things, from where we sit as legislators, we felt perhaps, the bill should have preceded, that it guides the other elements. But then, and as my colleague here has said, sometimes things happen concurrently. And if he explains to us, we will definitely then, if we're satisfied, we'll take it. But if not, we'll definitely put him to account on the issues, and I've picked them.
Okay, thank you so much for the
and may I please ask your blessings to leave? I'm sorry, I must leave now, because beyond this, then I will have missed the entire thing. And I need to, in the political space, everything is FaceTime. I need to show my face and show my support. So please, I have shown my face here, but yes. I hope it was useful. And as you know, you can always come to me. You can come to our committees. Please feel free. I've left some of my cards as well. So naomba radhi, naomba kwenda.
Na tunashukuru for your presence. But before you leave, yes, please, a round of applause to appreciate her. We were going to have a photo at the end. If you'd allow me to just have the picture taken now, and then we will be back to have Kiptines take on part of the response.
I'm really sorry. I normally don't like to disrupt. Are we taking it here? fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you for your patience, and thank you, Honorable Abshiro, for your time. I think I'll refer back to, I'm sorry. Oh, it's your Thigo? Okay. So we'll have Thigo also respond to the question that have been directed. Ali, should you put a pause to your question? Because we're going to give an answer. Okay. I think we'll take then the other two questions. There was a second person who was on the line, but anyway, the one who's up on the mic, introduce yourself and give us a question as well. Your questions, rather.
Good morning. My name is George, and this is actually to Mr. Thigo. I think what was amazing is you said your role is the how, which is a very big task. Because I think it mentioned that, you know, it's about enabling environment, right? But when you have on one end, you have the senator who has talked a lot about smart cities. You have Mr. Bengo who's been on blockchain and AI task force. We have the Vision 2030. My question is, how do we put all of these things together on a basic level, just to consider all of them and actually act in a way that is considerate of all of these moving levers?
So two things. I think the first thing, because Ali had asked the issue of overregulation. I think for us, as I mentioned, we're trying to, I think our basic principle, and I think this is what we really must adopt right now, especially if Kenya is a leading beacon in this. People look at what we do and emulate it. I can tell you we're already in a sort of ecosystem of about 5 countries that are working together in terms of simply understanding how technology is evolving. And I think for me, so there's almost an imperative around caution, but also not to be afraid. And I'll say this, and I say this also to the people I advise upstream, is that we shouldn't fear technology. And for me, I think the easiest response to what you fear is regulate. Right. So my sense has always been, and we've had a best practice in Kenya. This is overused, but what Central Bank did with Safaricom and the Communication Authority is a best practice, to the extent of how do you sandbox these ideas before you harm innovation. And I think for me that needs to be the principle, and that is something that I advocate increasingly. And to your question of how, this is something that we're already doing now with the CS Musheru, the PS for planning, the Treasury PS, and the United Nations, and a couple of private sector organizations, to try and understand. We have a data protection legislation. The blockchain report has just been launched. Is how do you, for example, understand, I know you talked about Vision 2030, but at the moment, the extrapolation of that is the Big Four. So how do you look at, how do you take specific aspects of the Big Four, whether it's food and nutrition security, if we were to look at traceability, right, and issues around land, how do you apply blockchain to that? So we are doing that. If you look at health, we are working with NAC right now in terms of data interoperability. NAC is the first agency that was taken to court around data privacy because of trying to register HIV/AIDS children. I hope you know this. So they had a regulation, but for us is to work with them to understand how do you start to apply interoperability principles, because schools are mixed match, right? It's private, government, and from ECD up there. In terms of manufacturing, it's simply around with Gearbox and a lot of these folks. It's simply how do you apply these new technologies around manufacturing. So that is how we are doing it. And at the same time, we're having policy alignments, but also financial alignments, but also scalability. So that has increasingly becoming our task. But we also have an open government initiative, which Gigi, I'm sure, is in the room. So we have one of you as part of that team. The idea, I think, with open government is to understand everything must be within that principle. So how do you ensure that you have transparency, accountability, but also some semblance of public participation? We're actually pushing the public participation legislation, because even we don't understand why you're evolving these legislations without public participation legislation. I don't get it. So our idea is that as much as people are looking at those, we want to look at the end of the day, what level of public participation will there be in the data protection law? If we don't have that, then really you put a notice today and then I come tomorrow. Anyway, so I think for me those are the big ideas that I think we are. For anybody who wants to know what we do more, we are one of those open houses that people can walk in.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I'll just leave it to Kiptines and Olubengo to give their final remarks as we wind down.
As far as overregulation is concerned, I think civil society just needs to keep government in check. Government has a natural tendency to overregulate. It's plain and simple. I mean, look at the US government now. And, you know, business doesn't like that. Civil society doesn't like that. To the extent that civil society keeps engaging, government shall not overregulate. I think we are bordering on overregulation. It's not just the data protection legislation we're looking at. Even questions around licensing of OTTs. Keep the government in check. I think that's my suggestion. Having been, you know, one a hat both sides, that is one solution to it. I think this government, more than any other administration before it, has done well in trying to coordinate and talk to one another, speak out of the silos and speak to one another. I think that's even why the Presidential Delivery Unit was set up. There are rumors, you know, around why the Ministry of National Coordination was set up, but I think that's another reason. I think it's good to hear Thigo say that, you know, they're talking to different departments and sectors within different ministries to find out how can we all speak from the same page. So I think I have to give credit to this government. They're doing that way better than any other government before it. That is really important. I think Parliament, in my closing remarks, just sort of needs to get its acts together. I think we still have a lot of dual behavior, like they're not members of the same parliament, the National Assembly and the Senate, and, you know, hence the introduction of the two bills. I think they just need to be whipped together to think about the larger interests of the country. It's not about, you know, we hold this, the purse strings, you only manage the Senate, the counties, you can't talk about anything else. We have to look at the interest of the country. That's my biggest problem with the slow pace of legislation. And I think the ministries, the Ministry of ICT has a critical role to play in coordination with all other ministries. Data identity is really critical in our country, and I think I enjoy the conversations that are happening because it's keeping government honest, it's keeping civil society involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Olubengo?
Yeah, for me, my closing remarks will be to urge all of us to take time and go through these bills, these proposed bills. Perhaps do some background reading around data protection principles. I won't go into the details, but basically fairness and lawfulness, restriction to a specific purpose, transparencies, data minimization, storage limitation, accuracy, confidentiality, and accountability. There are broad principles around the data ecosystem that we should all take time to understand so that when we are faced with data governance questions, you have a broader understanding rather than a specific narrow view. And I specifically want to call out the techies. Techies tend to be very narrow-minded. I'm a programmer. I just want to create the payroll, full stop. I used to be. But as you are focusing on the narrow, there are people making decisions about what you're doing. And, you know, 3 months down the road, you realize that the app you've created is illegal. So you're left wondering what to do. So let's get involved. And for you to engage positively, you must at least put in the effort to understand the broader policy issues, even as you now narrow down to what exactly you're doing. Thank you.
Very much. I think I'll just conclude by summarizing what I've heard on the panel today. It sounds like the power is in our hands, not your hands, but our hands, all of us together, to, one, get ourselves aware of what is going on around these issues. When they call for public participations, it's important that you get involved, weigh in, give your submissions, or attend the forums where this is being done when it comes to drafting of laws and others. But also, there's a lot of effort that needs to be put in corporates, as well as all of those who are processing or collecting data in one form or other, to make sure that they are putting in place the right security systems to ensure that the consumer protection happens. There's transparency, that people understand what their data is being used for. And then as we leave also, the policymakers would need obviously to align, as well as the legislative arm to align itself in providing the right framework that hopefully will enable us to discover even more what we can do with data. I think with that, we will give a big round of applause to the panel that this morning was discussing this. And I believe all of them would be available at different points in the day for those who are available to interact with you more. And thank you so much for the opportunity. Bye.
Thank you so much, Mercy. Please clap for Mercy for moderating it so well. For those of you who came late, Mercy is heading the East Africa and the Horn Facebook team. So when we have tea, you can engage with them. We can engage with the team. I usually get a lot of requests from people. Please link me to Facebook. You know, this has happened to me. This has happened to me. Today is your opportunity to network with the Facebook team, do selfies, update them, and say, you know, I know them. I will be also engaging with Safaricom because I need to know why I didn't win Kocho Kocho. And sijui ruka na pick up. I have bought credit. Hope the next time it is me, they will pick a ponyoka with that pickup. So I will also be engaging with them. And there's a very important, you remember we changed the program. So we want to invite Nzano. Nzano is representing the Director General of the Communications Authority, the regulator. Again, this is an opportunity. One of the things you do when you come to these meetings, make sure you network. We will invite Zano to do the keynote address, and then we will go for tea. And at break time, you can engage Zano, you can engage the Communications Authority team and tell them why we think they should also have a say in some of the regulatory issues that are happening here, and say no. Zano, we are very happy, the support from CA, and we welcome you to tell us what the DG had for us.
Good morning. I'm standing here on behalf of the Director General, Communications Authority of Kenya. We would have been very happy to be with you today, but due to circumstances which are beyond his control, he couldn't be with us today. So I know I'm standing between you and the tea break, so I'll allow me to read his remarks quite fast. We shall also share the remarks in soft copy, so that if you want to internalize them later, we'll allow you to. So Keynote officials wakiongozwa na nahodha wetu Madam Grace Githaiga, na timu yake yote akina Barak, Liz, Ali Hussein, among others. We're happy to be here today as Communications Authority and to see all of you here today. I was very happy that when I was registering, I came slightly late. I was number 173, which is good. It shows that there were 172 people above me. And it shows how this Kenya IGF has grown over the years. I also participated among the first IGFs, and I recall we used to be with Sir Ali Hussein in Afralti in a very small room, and we will gather about 20 to 30 people. So it's a great pleasure this time when we see huge numbers in hundreds coming here today. So allow me to read the speech. So it gives me great pleasure to be here in the Kenya Internet Governance Forum, which is intended to generate dialogue towards the development of ICT sector. Indeed, over the years, the journey of working towards improving internet governance in Kenya, the authority has participated in all the Kenya IGF forums, all of them. Okay? I wish to reiterate that we have continued to value the deliberations on various current internet governance related topic discussions and have carefully chosen and demystified in the well-structured panel discussions. I commend the conveners and the wider internet technical community for keeping the national debate in internet governance public policy issues alive in Kenya. Ladies and gentlemen, the feedback that we get from these forums have been taken very seriously by the authority, and some of the ideas have expressed here have eventually evolved to be national projects that have successfully been implemented. Some of these topics include cybersecurity, data protection and privacy, protection of the country's critical infrastructures, internet freedom, securing government networks, shaping talented ICT service students and graduates, supporting research and innovation, managing hate speech and fake news, among other topics. Ladies and gentlemen, the Kenya IGF continues to be a role model to the national and regional IGFs around the world. It is equally worth noting with great admiration that most of the topic discussions made here find their way to the global IGF events. The authority has keenly been following up on this, and I take note of these areas of interest in this year's IGF, which include internet sustainability, security robustness, stability, data governance, digital inclusion, to name just a few. Ladies and gentlemen, it is important to note that the information and communication technologies, ICTs, have been identified as the key enabler to the government's achievement of the Big Four agenda. The government has continued to ensure ICTs are integrated to its operations through steps already taken by the government in partnerships with private sector. ICTs have given a significant boost to efficiency in service delivery. Emerging technologies, including artificial intelligence and fintech technologies, among others, are now being used to improve people's lives through healthcare, education, finance, agriculture, transportation, and a wide range of other services. To support the government efforts and in line with this year's IGF forum, One Kenya, One Net, One Vision, I'm happy to inform you that the authority has taken bold and deliberate steps to stimulate the infrastructure development and uptake of ICT services. There are ongoing efforts to build ICT infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and foster innovation. To this end, I'm pleased to report that the authority is currently deploying voice infrastructure in 202 sub-locations that have no connectivity at all, covering an underserved population of approximately 700,000 Kenyans. The authority is also connecting 896 secondary schools with high-speed internet under the Education Broadband Connectivity Project. It is important to note here that the Education Broadband Connectivity Project will ultimately provide connectivity to all the 9,942 secondary schools across the country and some related tertiary institutions. The benefits of these projects are manifold. We envisage increased broadband connectivity in all parts of the country, including rural areas where a majority of the schools are located. The development of terrestrial fiber optic connectivity to the 47 county headquarters has also enabled provision of most effective government services online. With 51 million mobile subscribers and 46.9 million internet subscriptions in the period of January to March 2019, Kenyans utilized 1,149 gigabytes of international bandwidth from the total available international bandwidth of 4,665 GPS. This indicates that Kenya is increasingly utilizing the internet to connect with the world for various purposes such as social networking, business access to government services. The digital world offers immense possibilities, and the new digital technologies and services are becoming the cornerstone of our daily reality. To harness the positive power of internet for Kenya's transformation, the country embarked on digital transformation journey with the launch of the Digital Economy Blueprint. The blueprint seeks to harness the benefits of internet to transform the lives for all Kenyans. Towards this end, the authority supports the 5 pillars of the Digital Economy Blueprint so as to realize the potential digital transformation that will leapfrog our economy to prosperous heights. The pillars are digital government, digital business infrastructure, innovation-driven, entrepreneurship, and digital skills and values, In line with the goals set out in the Vision 2030, the digital economy will connect Kenyans to the world. Our goods, services, and expertise will be accessible across borders, opening new markets and capitulating Kenya to join the first world markets where citizens benefit from direct access to markets globally. Ladies and gentlemen, the outlined topics of this year's events are thus very timely. To achieve a fully digital economy as a country, we must therefore deliberate the earlier mentioned topics that included internet security, stability, resilience, data governance, among others. Not for stock taking, but also for noting the various areas of improvement. As you are aware, and in order to enhance the security of Kenya's cyberspace and in line with the Kenya Information Communications Act and the National Cybersecurity Strategy, the authority has continued to operate the Kenya Computer Incident Response Team Coordination Center, that is the KSATCC, for national coordination response to cyber threats. The national KSAT is also the national point of contact for cybersecurity matters. Given the nature of cybercrime, the authorities KSAT is working with various stakeholders in the national level, including law enforcement, the private sector, academia, the financial sector, and civil society, among others. We continue to enhance our collaboration framework with all stakeholders and international partners, including strengthening the cybersecurity regulatory framework to facilitate the expeditious resolution of cybercrime and related activities. To this end, we look forward to the full implementation of the Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act of 2018, and we believe we will go a long way to support matters of governance and curbing cybercriminal activities in Kenya. I also wish to commend KICTANET's efforts through engagement with lawmakers, including the Senate Committee on ICT, on the Data Protection Bill 2018, among other upcoming laws. These open consultative sessions should be encouraged. I further appreciate lawmakers, both in the Senate and Parliament, for their continued efforts and keenness and support in putting in place legislation that shall protect the interests of the Kenyans in this fast-growing digital world. With these few remarks, I take this opportunity to wish you fruitful deliberations, even as we look forward to participating in the various panel discussions. Thank you for your attention, kind attention. Oh, okay, I had to consult. Apparently, the Director General was also supposed to declare the 2019 Kenya Internet Governance Forum officially open. Thank you.
A better round of applause for Mr. Nzano and to the CA team. Thank you very much, Mr. Nzano. Thank you very much to the Communications Authority for believing in the internet governance process and for teaching us how to engage. We don't always say nice things about CA when we are engaging, but I can assure you we are the best of friends. When we meet out there in meetings, they are always willing to offer a cup of tea. Okay? The Kenyan style. And it's just reminded me of a Nigerian proverb that no matter how hot your anger is, you know, as stakeholders, especially from civil society, mko hapa, we are known for being hot-tempered, isn't it? Kupita na watu. No, but no matter how hot our anger is, it cannot cook yams. Sawa sawa. And with that, I would like to invite you for tea. Please take 20 minutes. We are running short on time. Let's be seated. Right now, it is 11:02. Let's be seated by 11:20. We have more interesting sessions lined up for you, and you don't want to miss that. So let's network as we go for tea at where there is a tent out there. See you at 11:20.